Hey guys, hope the holidays treated you well and that your new year's off to a great start. This is the first Q&A of the new year, so I'm just going to dive right in. I'm going to start with a pre-submitted question. The question is, how do you think people cure their cancers with plant-based eating, juicing, no sugar, dairy, gerson therapy, high vitamin C, IV therapy? I haven't really seen stories of I beat my cancer with bone broth and cane sugar, or maybe people eat pro-metabolic and just don't get cancer, which obviously makes good sense. But why do you think all those other natural therapies work for people? I remember reading a book called Chris Beat Cancer, and the guy was pretty much plant-based and pounding green veggies. So first of all, I think it's important to understand why cancer exists, and it basically, just like any other disease, it's a lack of energy. Our cells need energy to function properly, and when we don't have enough energy to do so, our body will start replicating itself and go for quantity over quality. So that's really important to understand. It's metabolic dysfunction at its worst, and there are several imbalances happening all at once. For example, estrogen is probably very high in someone with cancer. Iron is likely at play as well. Just like any other disease too, it's important to understand that preventing cancer is much easier than treating cancer. A lot of these therapies work and can seem beneficial, and some of them are, because any change is better than no change at all. But just like anything else, is it a long-term change? Will it cure you, really? Or is it suppressing symptoms that, for a certain period of time until they come back and get worse? I don't know. Everyone is different in the way that they react to different therapies. Different things work for different people. Different people are at different stages. I myself have never had to deal with it, so I couldn't say that any one thing is better than another. What I could say is that what all of these things have in common is that they're an alternative way to the conventional way to approach cancer, which is, usually chemotherapy. So if I had to deal with it myself, I would probably be looking at all of these options. But what I focus on personally is maintaining the metabolism and getting it to maximum functionality so that I can prevent it rather than have to deal with it later. To really figure out, what the difference is between all of these two, I'd want to see long-term data. How long was the cancer put into remission? Did it ever come back? So these are all things that I don't know about these therapies that I'd want to know before deciding, and also look at how these things affect my physiology, because am I trading one, issue for another issue down the road? So I know this probably wasn't the answer you're looking for, but I would prefer to really focus on my metabolism and supporting my physiology the best I possibly can so that I can avoid things like this happening and can keep myself robust enough to evade even the highest stressors, which stress depletes us of energy and increases our need for energy. And if we cannot meet our demands, that's when stuff starts to fall by the wayside. So I hope that helps. I should also mention, if you're looking for more reading on this subject, Dr. Ray Peat has a bunch of articles on cancer on his website, and they're free and they're much easier to read than your average research study. So I highly recommend checking them out. Thoughts on infrared saunas? I think they would be a great tool. They can be a great tool. It just depends on the state of your physiology, because if you are in a very stressed state, weakened state, they can create more stress and cause more problems rather than help you. So that said, most people can handle infrared saunas at least for a little bit of time at a time. So it's just up to you, and the only way to know is to try. Thoughts on castor oil packs? I think these can be a great tool as well. It just depends on the state of life that you're in. So if you're focusing on healing, really detoxifying the body, they can be excellent. But if you are going to be trying for a baby, or if you're pregnant, these are definitely not things you want to be using. So that's just, dependent on what your goals are, your health goals are at the time, but they can be an excellent tool. Thoughts on how to deal with tissue-bound estrogen? So this is a good question. The only way that you can get estrogen to come out of the tissues is with a couple things. Increase your metabolism, so your thyroid function, your progesterone production, and lower your iron. It sounds simple, but it requires a holistic approach and really focusing on increasing the metabolism. So my whole page is dedicated to this, as well as, preparing for pregnancy. So I would look through my iron and copper highlights, as well as my hormones highlight. And as you start to detoxify estrogen, things might get a little worse before they get better. So really making sure you're nourishing yourself and taking it at a pace that your body can handle is important. Do taking BCAAs have any significant health benefits? My husband is obsessed. I think this varies from person to person, just like any supplement does. It really depends on your level of activity, your health goals. Are you looking to put on muscle? They usually have a complex of amino acids, so different kinds of proteins. I would personally, if I were supplementing with protein, look for proteins that are harder to get in the diet, like glycine and taurine. But that said, BCAAs can be a nice complement to an already really awesome nutrition strategy and lifestyle strategy. So that said, if I were looking for a BCAA supplement, I would be looking for one that's really clean. I have no idea if this exists, but I would be looking for BCAAs derived from grass-fed animals. And then I would also be looking at the additives because there's a lot of dyes and other fillers that usually get added to these kinds of bodybuilding sports drinks. The only brand that I know of, I think, is Naked, and I think they make just BCAAs. It's flavorless, no sugars or fake sugars, nothing else. So that could be a good option. You also want to pair some kind of juice or carbohydrate with the BCAAs because if you're drinking straight protein, you're going to drop your blood sugar, and that's going to especially suck if you're in the middle of a workout. Plus, most of them also have artificial sweeteners, which also drop our blood sugar. So we really want to be smart in the way that we supplement them. Top tips for reducing gray hairs. So I did a post on this a while back. Check out my highlight called Hair. The post is also bright red, so try to find it if you can. But that said, melanin is what determines the pigment of our hair, our eyes, our skin. And so for that to function properly, you need tyrosine, which is an amino acid. And for tyrosine to function properly, you need tyrosinase, which is another enzyme. A lack of either of these things can drive loss of pigment. A lack of either of these things can also be, mean you have hypothyroidism as well. Stress also depletes copper, which is in tyrosinase, and you need copper as well to convert thyroid hormone. So it's kind of it could be very much a mishmash of things happening, or you could just be deficient in tyrosinase or tyrosine. Regardless of your particular situation, I would probably work in some copper-rich foods like beef liver or chicken liver or shellfish, mollusks, and vitamin C-rich foods. What do you think of coral calcium? So I'm actually not too familiar with this supplement, but I do use for those that are lactose intolerant and can't consume dairy. Sometimes I use pearl powder, which is derived from actual crushed pearls, and that's another marine source of calcium. So I'll look into that. I would bet that their profiles are pretty similar, but thanks for the tip. I'll look into it. What vitamins and supplements would you take if you were pregnant? Thank you. So that's a great question. I'm going to be talking more about this exact topic in my upcoming course with the Preconception PT. So if you're curious and want to get updates, sign up. For updates, sign up via the link in my bio. Can you share more info on how liver supplements can cause detox effects like breakouts? So this can potentially happen with a whole host of supplements, but the way that I like to describe it is imagine if your body was sleeping and all of a sudden you're coming out of hibernation, you have the fuel to function properly. And so all of this detoxification that you probably weren't able to, conduct before in your body is happening now because your body's getting the nutrients it needs to run the enzymes, which run the hormones, which run our whole metabolism to function. So that's kind of what I would say could potentially cause a detox reaction. Whether or not this is just a detox reaction or it's a supplement not working for you really depends how long it lasts and the direction that it's going in. Because if it gets bad for a little while and then better later, then that was a healing reaction. But if it keeps getting worse, let's say, months and months, like over 3 months, which is usually the kind of like sweet spot for figuring out if something works for you or not, then maybe the supplement itself is not working for you and your body. Is daily eating of raw butter healthy? I personally think butter is a superfood, especially for fertility, and raw butter has the Wolsen factor, which is an anti-stiffness compound, and many beneficial enzymes. Now, the real question is, does butter work for you? Because if it does, then amazing, that's great. But if it doesn't work for you and you're still eating it every day, then is it healthy? I don't know. Thoughts on Bumble Root hydration when TTC because of stevia, but I need more potassium. I'm not a big fan of stevia, but it really depends on you and how you pair it with, what you pair it with, because like I mentioned before, it does lower blood sugar, so it needs to be paired with carbohydrate, very strategically. But that said, they do have an unflavored version, which I have my eye on, so that should be totally fine and solve the problem. So try that one. ETA on your new course for pregnancy nutrition. So great question. Thank you for your interest. It's not just about pregnancy nutrition. It's actually about how to prepare your pelvic floor and exercises and so much more. But that said, putting together a course is no joke. The preconception PT and myself, so Dr. Britt and myself, have been working very hard. But that said, we're probably thinking March now for the actual launch. So sign up via the link in my bio to get updates on this. Do you think it's necessary to take 6 liver caps a day? So I think it depends on the phase of healing and, life that you're in. 6 liver caps is equal to 1 ounce of liver. So if you do that every day, you're getting 7 ounces of liver each week, which is an excellent source of vitamin A and other nutrients. And that's, what I usually recommend anyway. But if you're trying to conceive or pregnant, you might want more. That said, it's also important to look at your diet. Are you getting liver elsewhere? Do you eat chicken liver? So that's important too. But also, does liver work for you? Because it doesn't work for everyone. So if you force yourself to take something that doesn't work for you, it may no longer be helpful. So hope that gives you some ideas. My sister's body temperature cools down to 35.4 degrees, that's Celsius, after lunch. What does that mean? There's other options, but usually this means that the heat that was being generated prior to the meal was because of stress hormones. So the food actually reduced stress, and so what you're seeing is the true state of the metabolism. So I have a free metabolism health check guide in the link in my bio, and it has a couple tips on what to do and how to improve your overall metabolism. When will you be taking on new clients? So thank you so much for your interest. Likely it's looking February, March now. Do you recommend prenatal vitamins before getting pregnant? So if we look at the idea of prenatal vitamins, they're supposed to enhance our nutrition and provide us a little bit extra nutrition and as a supplement to our diet. Now, if we look at our diet, it's likely lacking in key nutrients, but also prenatal vitamins provide a little bit too much of a false sense of security. Too many women are leaning on them because they either don't know how to or choose not to nourish themselves properly. And if we look at actually what the prenatal vitamin is made of, supplement companies are not going to make a profit unless they cut their losses somewhere. They will never, ever, ever be a replacement for a nutrient-dense diet. And many of the nutrients in prenatal vitamins are in the wrong ratios, very synthetic drug-like forms, and they're in imbalanced ratios, which a lot of the time they can throw us into more imbalance, which we likely already are going into pregnancy because most women these days are in debt, health debt, and not putting us in a great position to conceive. Now, that said, if you're coming from the standard American diet or a vegan diet or something, really nutrient poor, then maybe this is a solution for you. Or if you're a yes doctor, no doctor patient and they just told you to take one of those and you're fine, then, I can only lead a horse to water. But if you're someone that wants to take control of their nutrition, really learn and understand how to nourish yourself, then a prenatal is a moot point. This is one of the things I'm very passionate about, as you can tell, and this is exactly what I'll be teaching in my upcoming course, is what foods and what real food supplements. And it's not that I'm anti-supplement. There are really helpful supplements out there. They just have to be taken strategically. So hope that helps you understand where I'm coming from. Thoughts on water filtration? Are Brita and Berkey's worth buying? So Brita, no. Berkey, yes. I think it's one of the most affordable filters out there. It's a pretty decent filter for what you get. It filters out most heavy metals, medications, fluoride if you get the fluoride filters. So I personally like it, and I think it's a really low-hanging fruit kind of filter if you don't want to spend so much money. Way to support heavy menstrual cycle, 14 months postpartum, still breastfeeding 2 times a day. So yeah, postpartum, it can take our bodies a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things. Depending on how long your cycle's been back for, you're probably not producing enough progesterone. So I would work on getting your progesterone production up. Check out my post about progesterone. Blood sugar balance is really important. Also getting nutrients like vitamin C and just overall nutrient-dense foods. And download my free cycle literacy guide. It'll have more tips on exactly how to hack, in a way, your menstrual cycle. Would not taking prenatal vitamins reduce or eliminate nausea? It really depends on the person, and the only way to know is to try. But I have had several women reach out to me saying that when they stopped, their nausea was stopped as well. How you reconcile differences in advice from 2 experts you admire? So this is a good question. The fact that you have 2 differing opinions is important and very good. It's a good sign. What I would say is do your own research, even more research, because it sounds like you've come across 2 differing opinions in your research, and really trust your gut. Dig deep if it's something that you really care about, but at the end of the day, you have to go with what you feel is right. For example, I'll give you an example from my world. Dr. Ray Peat is very pro hormone D, but the root cause protocol and other experts are very weary about it. So I've done even more of my own research, and while I do admire many of the things that Dr. Ray Peat has to say, I don't agree with everything he has to say. And while I do really love everything and believe in everything that Morley Robbins at the Root Cause Protocol, one of my mentors and teacher, has to say, I don't agree with every single thing that he has to say either. So it's really up to you to make your most best informed decision. How to lower highferritin, 244 while pregnant. Yeah, that's pretty high. Sorry to hear you're going through that. I would check out my post on ferritin. It's in my iron and copper highlight. I would probably work with somebody from the Root Cause Protocol just because you are pregnant and probably need a practitioner's eye and don't really want to mess too much with stuff right now. It is a sign of stress and inflammation. So that said, pregnancy is a very stressful time, so it depends how you went into pregnancy, and this could be why it's happening because of the preconception phase, but I would work with a practitioner from the Root Cause Protocol and get that squashed. Thoughts on contributing health factors to postpartum depression, anxiety, and rage. So I'm sorry to hear that you're going through this if this is you. I've talked a little bit about this before. Dr. Katharina Dalton calls postpartum depression a hormonal disease. It has a lot to do with a huge drop in hormones, but your ability to get them back up is also really important. And it also has to do with, you just birthed a child, you might be breastfeeding as well. You're very depleted in minerals. And if we weren't in a good state prior to conception, the postpartum period is going to be a lot more difficult. So I would focus on nourishing yourself and really repleting, balancing blood sugar, and getting hormones in check. Crumbling and aching teeth, could it be a calcium and magnesium deficiency? Yes, it's possible, but the bones are made of over 12 different minerals. Check out my calcium supplements, why I don't recommend them, and that should shed more light. Please help. What causes delusions, apathy, problems with verbal fluency, pregnancy now? So this sounds like a severe case of antepartum depression. So it's depression during pregnancy, perhaps other complications. Of course, this is just me speculating. There could also be mineral deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, nutritional deficiencies that are leading to verbal fluency problems. So I would seek help right away. honestly, don't wait. Go see someone. Do know though, if you are going to get treated for something like depression during pregnancy, they'll likely prescribe you SSRIs, which is not a great combo with pregnancy. Taking SSRIs while pregnant or even beforehand can mess really deeply with the child's health. So just know that and beware and be prepared to have that conversation with your healthcare provider. Would you ever get your tubes tied, or what other method would you use? Honestly, I will probably never get my tubes tied. I don't want to create any hormonal imbalances or do anything invasive like that to my body. I will use FAM, fertility awareness method. Check out my post on this. It's not that old. And then, so I practice that. I'd probably use condoms and call it a day. I would also never let my husband get a vasectomy because that can create problems too. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Sorry if I didn't get to answer your question this week. Next time, I promise. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend.